It's a gig marketplace platform. So essentially, we go out and we recruit workers, and we find them spots on projects to work. And the focus right now is office and commercial furniture installation. I had a former company, and it was primarily property management, but we started to do building staffing. I exited in 2018, and I knew I wanted to start another company. It's something alongside of staffing and maintenance, but I didn't really have an exact direction. And I was introduced to a guy named Adam Goodman. He owns Goodman's Interior Structures, and he, I guess, had his own version of that in his head based on a need that his own company had. And it was kind of like the stars aligned. We did the 9-month Coplex program. So we went through an accelerator. We actually started that in April 2019. And I remember the first project we staffed was actually in July. So it was a 9-month program, but we really went out there and started testing on the ground pretty quickly. It's a business that deals with people, lots of people, and one thing is dealing with the inconsistency of humans being human, but then also trying to create a platform and automations that can be applicable to a broad audience and lots of different scenarios. And it was a challenge that we've done really well with, but a lot of kind of thought goes into it and a lot of tweaking, because we have all sorts of people who are working in the platform. I think I probably spent more time than most in the beginning doing kind of brain picking of people who we would categorize as potential clients and people who we categorize as potential workers. I didn't have an office furniture background. I had a startup background and a staffing background, but the content itself was relatively new for me. And I actually think that helped because sometimes fresh eyes see fresh things. But I spent a lot of time talking to the people and kind of getting into the pain points that they faced, but not just like what are the pain points. It was about what are the ramifications of those pain points, right? Because you can say to someone, hey, I'm going to fix this problem. That's great, but if you can kind of understand the impact of that problem being fixed and make whatever you're trying to push about that endpoint, I've always found that to be a bit more compelling. We're going to expand into additional markets. Right now we're in Phoenix, Tucson, and recently in Dallas, and rolling out additional verticals. So, our name is broad, and that's not coincidental. And so we want to start incorporating other kinds of B2B installation projects, not just office and commercial furniture. When we were kind of designing this in the beginning, and I was wondering, hey, can a handyman or a carpenter or an auto mechanic who has the tools, is there a value to having them on a project maybe? And because they're not overly experienced in this directly, it could be done in a way that would help the client save money. And so we started testing that, and it worked. There are less technical projects. You're putting together chairs. That's less technical. Or it's a 2-person project and doesn't need 2 expert level people because one person really genuinely is kind of back up dance to the other. So once we found that worked, it was great. But then the question was, okay, well, if I'm sending people from these certain industries and they can be effective in this industry, where can I send people from this industry? Can I go the other way? So can someone who's an experienced office and commercial furniture installer, can they be effective and do the same thing over there? And so we started testing that with one vertical so far, which would be commercial millwork, and it's been successful so far. And there's a couple other slated behind that. I'm very optimistic and confident that they'll be a good fit, but I'm an Eric Ries Lean Startup cult follower, so I do have to go through like the true testing of it. But the idea will ultimately be to have a select number of verticals that we service, but they're synergistic, and so we will actually be able to have a very significant B2B labor platform, but with one supply pool and not a segmented supply pool. And so each worker will have, primary, secondary, tertiary kind of focus of the kind of work we want to send them, but they'd be more than capable of contributing to a project in a different vertical. When I first started, we were working at Galvanize, and Dinah was running Galvanize at the time, and she then got involved with Startup AZ. She introduced me to it, and once I looked into it, there's a plethora of reasons why it's a fantastic thing to be a part of. It's cliche, being a founder is a lonely experience, but it is true. There's not a lot of areas, at least of my life, where it's hard to find someone who can relate, where you're a son, a sibling, a father, a mother, or whatever you're going through. Mostly there's enough people out there, but as a founder, there's not a lot of people out there. There's fewer, and the ones you do find, they may not be at the same stage you're at, right? So they might understand, but they're beyond that, and so or you're beyond them, and it's kind of a one-sided relationship. But one of the things I really like about Startup AZ is the groupings, right? And so the fact that they are conscious enough to know that it's not just, hey, this is this year's group, right? But it's about being at a certain stage, because you can't really be dealing with things that are that far off from the other, and that's if we're getting really picky about the peers that we're looking for, that makes a big difference. Just start. The majority of the learnings happen when you're in it, right? It's like the difference between med school and practicing medicine, right? You can prep all you want, and you can tally and calculate your market size and this and that, but the reality is that however you start is not what you're going to look like a year from now, 5 years from now. In my first company, we started as third-party property management, and we had assumed that the big sister arm of that company was going to be residential leasing. We eventually did have a residential leasing arm, but our big arm was staffing, and we hadn't even really factored that in. And partially it was because the buildings that we managed in the beginning were small, so they didn't have in-building staff, and that outpaced every other revenue stream we had. And if you had asked us about that before we started the company, it wouldn't have it wouldn't have occurred to us. And so you need to go where the market takes your company, right? Like you kick the ball out there and you get it going, but you have to kind of be open to kind of the difference between your perception of the use and need of your product versus the true customer's use and need of your product.